have representation. He's like brokering these deals himself. So I feel like there's more control and agency, and that kind of like anti-institutionality move almost than there is in like having representation, having this like collector base. Getting your work in museums where Black people are being watched or whatever. Like there's some contradiction between that I don't think people have resolved yet. But it's all fine and happy in their mind. But that's whatever. But yeah, I think these people are extracting on blackness from Black people, kind of, in a sense. And I think also, yeah, there's just, I don't know, I see myself as part of the Black art tradition, definitely. I feel like I'm making Black art, but I don't think that anyone else does. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's some things that I wanted to just come back to. Like one, um, I feel like you were saying at some point that the class pro-black artist would be kind of doing artwork that references anti-blackness or racism, like the watermelons and the sheep keep stuff and all that. But they're doing it in order to get praise from what they already know is going to be a white bourgeois audience. And so their anti-racism itself is a like tap dancing performance, basically, which is so I don't know what dimension of racism that is, but that is like some matrix shit. That is like it is anti-racism itself is the blackface costume, which is
Hmm.
very scary because like okay, well, where do we go from here? Like, there's like some exponents of anti-blackness is happening there, and I have no idea. What is the greatest threat to your inspiration?
I wrote an answer to this. I think I said intentionality, or I had like this kind of like riffing on like how I think about intentionality in artwork, how I feel like that limits artwork. But I think the greatest thought against inspiration is people that don't believe in inspiration. I've had a number of professors and artists tell me like, "Hey, inspiration is overrated." Um, don't It's like I get it because like in an art school critique environment, you can't just say like, "Oh, it was my intuition that led me here," and that's good. But it's also like before we had this like academic institutional framework for art making, house were people making things but being inspired by the gods. So um, I think the greatest static and inspiration are people that don't value it. And it took me a while to just like kind of like navigate this fine line between like because like it's just there's like this tradition of improvisation in jazz, but also just through black art as a worldview and epistemology. Improvisation is important. You see it in the quotes, you see it in poetry, writing, whatever. Improvisation is so important, and it's very black, and it has there is like definitely some intentionality in improvisation. Don't get me wrong, but I think of that more as like I think of those like musicians or artists as working within constraints that they've set, and that's their intentionality. And then there's like some kind of like freedom or spontaneity to unravel once they've set the formal conditions for their work. That's when the magic can happen. But I think that's hard to elucidate in like an art school environment. If people don't believe in inspiration, I think people believe in like and it's like this is conversations that people have had for years. Susan Sontag against interpretation or whatever. Like this whole kind of opposition to hermeneutics. And I don't know. I don't know. At one point, I believe like talking about artwork kills it, but I think now it's like an artist kind of. This is a tricky line to navigate. An artist's job, you know, is to leave some space of surprise or spontaneity or imagination in the work itself. Something unresolved. It doesn't mean like, oh, like I'm just like stapling my painting to a wall. That's the unresolved thing. I think to me it means like, where do I leave voids in artwork where imagination from the viewer, from the audience, after I set these formal constraints, where do I leave voids where people can think and desire other things than what I'm seeing? Um, and I don't know, I feel like it's just hard to be inspired now. I mean, we live in such a different world. And like people, because I was thinking about the etymology of the word inspiration. In, within, spire, breath, like some like within breath. You can imagine as God, you can imagine as whatever. It's just something coming from within and it's breathing inside of you. And I think it's so beautiful. But I mean, I think there's a reason that we don't have medieval mystics anymore. We don't have mystics getting visions from God or whatever. And you could say it's like because they ate some weird bread or mushrooms or something and they didn't know what it was. But I think it's like there's there's a real disconnect kind of happening. Um, we're just whatever. If people want to call it the unconscious, the subconscious, the universe, God, I call it God, whatever. I think um, it's just the phone is like off or something. Like it's there's just and I think that there's just so much stimulation too now. Everyone's overstimulated. Everyone's writing about the attention economy. It's funny people are writing about the attention economy, but then they're like contributing articles and content that just extend the attention economy. But yeah, the greatest threat to inspiration. Um, is maybe other people not believing in inspiration. Is maybe the self too. Is maybe um, and like I'm thinking about. I don't think this is like a dead end. Like I think there are ways to like cultivate conditions for consciousness. Like I'm thinking about this piece by Adrian Piper, "Food for the Spirit," where she's like fasting for this number of days or whatever, and she has this like kind of spiritual connection to Kant that occurs. And I think of that as an altered state of consciousness that kind of occurs to aestheticism in some sense. I think it's possible to facilitate these things, but there's also okay. I think I know what I'm going to call it. I'm going to call it there's a lack of discursivity maybe around inspiration. There's no language for it. There's no rhetoric. There's no. It's such a fundamental part of being an artist, and um, I think the world is kind of turning us all into artists in the sense that life is just getting more precarious and gig oriented. I just worked a gig last night, and yeah, things are just getting more precarious. Everyone's becoming an artist. It's like the model of American independence and freedom, whatever. I know the word antithetical, but I don't know if thetical is a word. But inspiration is thetical to being an artist, and yet the field itself has become so professionalized, and so institutionalized and academic, to where I don't think if someone was receiving visions from wherever, I don't think there'd be a discourse for them to live in. And I say this because I think it's necessary to have discursivity around art. Like I think people feel whatever way about abstraction, but the reason that it has such a prominence in our culture is because there's language around it. Otherwise, I think it would have fell through the cracks if there wasn't like Clement Greenberg and Michael Fried or whatever just writing about this abstraction in this way, you know. And does that kind of prop it up? Sure, but I think discursivity around art is necessary to um, place it in the world.
If you could describe your a work that is not your favorite,